Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is sponsored by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a company run by Joe Ross. He's a former Army fullback. He's a former Army assistant coach, Army officer. He's been a guest on the Black Knight Nation podcast. And if you go on our YouTube channel, Black Knight Nation, and subscribe, you'll find plenty of interviews with former Army players like Joe Ross. And you'll find some even I did an interview with Isaiah Morris last week heading into the Army-Navy game. You can check that out. And we also have a press conference with Isaiah Alston on that on our YouTube channel. The catch that he made against UMass was one for the ages, Steve. I mean, I don't know if you caught that, but that was all over ESPN. And, man, maybe he'll make a couple of those against Navy on Saturday. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, as you might remember, Sal, my older brother played for UMass football, and my younger brother played for UMass lacrosse. They both just ended up going there, lived in the same house. So of course I had, the family bragging rights when I just texted 44/7. That was it. You know what I mean?
That's a can of whoop ass, no doubt. That's a can.
Yeah. So they saw they watched the game and everything, and they saw the catch on ESPN, so they were just like, you guys are way better than we were on Saturday.
That's our recap, Steve. Our recap with you on the UMass game. We'll get to our guest here, Clay Daniels. Clay, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we kind of how we get to start these podcasts. It's kind of get to know your West Point journey and how it all started for you, how you were recruited, and were you interested in Army, or was the first time you heard about Army was when you heard from a recruiting coach? How did it go for you?
Yeah, so I was your typical high school defensive back and wide receiver, and here from Kansas City area, and didn't know anything about West Point. And there's a guy named Bill Sheridan. I don't know if you know Bill Sheridan. In fact, he's one of my favorite coaches of all time. He came to my high school. Back in the day, we didn't have Twitter or any social media. I think all of our highlight tapes were on VHS tapes and stuff back then. So, yeah, he came in, would have been 1995. Came to Blue Valley North High School in Overland Park, Kansas, and told me about West Point. And, I ended up deciding to go there. So didn't really know what I was getting into. But, yeah, Bill Sheridan was the reason why.
Yeah, I think it's Clay, when you say you didn't really know what you're getting into, is that because you didn't ask the questions, they weren't really upfront about it, or did you were they kind of telling you like, hey, this is what to expect? You really can't wrap your head around it at that time?
Well, I went on a recruiting visit, and when I went out there, you have your Army football player who's the host, and I went and I ate in the dining facility. And I remember it was in the wintertime. It was probably there's snow on the ground. So everyone's wearing their dress gray with their overcoats on and everything. And it was freezing cold. And for some reason, it still didn't quite click that I was actually going to be wearing the same uniform and going to school. It just was like, hey, you're playing Division I college football. And so that one little visit in just the military and understanding that I'd be going to formation at 6 a.m. Didn't really click for an 18-year-old high school kid, but hey, when I got there, I was all in. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of. I feel like that's a lot of maybe the naivety about the football players is you get these coaches that tell you they want you to come here. You do your visit, you get that small kind of experience on the visit because they don't necessarily hide it, but they only show you the good stuff, kind of deal. And they might be the guys were always honest, but they never made it out to be that hard or like impossible. And the people I met, it was like, oh man, I mean, I feel like I can do this. I just think it's always funny when you hear guys, no matter where they went to the academy, they're like, yeah, I didn't really know exactly what I was going to be doing when I got there, but they're glad they went, and they stay for the brotherhood for the most part. So that's pretty cool. So you said you went to your journey, or you went on your visit in the winter time frame. Did you go back at all prior to our day, or was that like your one taste of West Point and the next time was our day?
Yeah, that was my one taste. I stayed at the Thayer Hotel in those small little rooms with my dad, and then stayed overnight. I think one night in the Barracks, and that was my one little taste. I said I wanted to go, and committed to go to West Point. Of course, you had to fill out all the paperwork and actually get the appointment and the nomination. I actually got my nomination from Bob Dole. He was a senior from Kansas, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, signed up and gosh, I think Beast Barracks would have been in June of 96. So, yep, I remember driving out there all 18 hours from Kansas with my mom the whole way, and she was talking to me the whole way. And then of course everyone has that our day experience where you say goodbye to your folks, and then you kind of turn the corner and you're like, holy cow, what did I get myself into here? So, but yeah, I mean, the Beast Barracks, Steve, you probably remember it, is probably not much different. And for you, is what, 2006? You went to UMass, right?
Yeah, I went to prep school, so like Beast Barracks was, I mean,
piece of cake for you.
Prep school was my, like, oh my, I mean, I remember getting smoked like the second night there and being like, yeah, this ain't what I'm about. And then the third day they let us start playing football, and I was like, all right, this is what I'm about. So like, if they didn't start sports that soon, I don't know, man. I mean, I was sitting out there with 4-2 courts on my arms, wall sitting, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, this is my second day, and I'd already screwed up. And I was like, man, I just came here to play ball. Mm-hmm. And no, like 1 p.m., 1300 the next day, break out the sports. And I met Coach Ben Cowika that day. And I swear, if I hadn't have met him that day, I don't know if I would have stuck it out. He was like, the old saying, right, from all the old grads, just give it another week, give it another try. So, but yeah,
it's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because Ben Cowika was actually my Beast Barracks company commander.
Wow.
So maybe he was our platoon leader. He was wearing the red sash and all that stuff, and it took a couple days before I realized Ben Cowika was a football player, and was not only that, but the team captain. So yeah, he did kind of whisper to the ball players, say, hey, just hang in there, it'll be okay. So
yeah, and I think him and we had Major King, now Colonel King, as our OR. All he talked about was you can't just be a great football at West Pointer, right? You can't just care about football and be a great football player. You gotta walk the walk in everything you do, and that's what always has stuck with me since meeting Major, now Colonel King, was win at everything, have strap lines on your uniform, shoes shine, like dominate at everything, go to class. That was preached to us from our OR, and it was just kind of it made a lot of sense because just like you, Clay, I mean, you like winning. Winning's nice. It's everything's more fun when you can attach winning to it. So
that's right. Colonel King, is that Disa King?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's one of my boys right there.
Oh yeah. So when you get to, you guys have, you get to your sports, right? They finally let you go play sports. What was that freshman year like for you? And kind of like, what was the culture from comparing it to, your high school team to now, a collegiate, you guys are coming off, I guess it was that season you guys were looking at, right? Because you were a freshman 96.
Yeah, that was 96. That was the Independence Bowl team. You bet. So
right.
Yeah, for me, when I showed up, and we got through the Beast Barracks, and at the time, so Bob Sutton was the head coach. My position coach, defensive back coach, was Bill Sheridan. And at the time, we went up to the Hollander Center up there. They had like the ice rink, and we used to throw mattresses down all around the ice rink. Like that would have been late 90s, and that's where we slept during two-a-days. And that was the plebes' first introduction to two-a-day football. So we all slept there, and here we are. We just finished Beast Barracks. We go up there, and I think we had like position meetings pretty quick. And for me personally, I came from Kansas. I was the man in my high school. Hall of Fame guy, and I thought I was pretty good. I was a free safety in high school, so that's what I thought I was playing. At Army, and when I showed up, I remember going to the first position meetings, and we had a whiteboard, and we had all the positions, and there was a short corner, strong safety, free safety, and wide halfback. So that's what we called the corners, was short corner and wide halfback. And I was ninth string, short corner, and that was out of the freshmen, just out of the plebes. Like I was the ninth string, and I'm thinking, holy cow, I was last. There was like 36 defensive backs, just freshmen in here. And I'm like, man, am I even going to make this team? So I had those thought processes going through my head. And, it's been a while since I've been in the locker room, but they had all the nice lockers, like the wooden lockers and everything. Then there's this back room that had these like old yellow lockers. They're real skinny, and kind of metal mesh on there.
Yeah.
Well, that's where my name tap was just a piece of tape with my name on there. So for me, 2-a-days was fighting just to make the team. And by the time 2-a-days was done, my initials had moved up that depth chart, and I was, I think, third on it for the freshmen. And that's about where they made the cuts. And the folks that weren't up there didn't make the team. So,
Man,
I barely made it.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like looking back now, and I don't know, and I experienced this a little bit in high school, because when I transferred high schools, they put me as like third string tailback and second string linebacker. Like when I first got to the high school, and I was like, I'm way better than these guys. This is crazy. Right. So I feel like it's almost a little bit like those coaches know when they're getting a good ball player, just making sure they can kind of take that first piece of humble pie and like see that dig, that grit in him to know that, he just loves playing the game and he's going to go out there and play the game. I don't know if obviously when you're 18, all you're like is like, shit, man, like how am I number 9? Like they told me they wanted me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, like there's 9 guys in front of me. Like, why didn't they tell me that?
Yeah.
But looking back on it, I feel like that's something they do. Not, I don't know if that's what Army did back then with me, you, whoever, but it's a pretty good. When you're getting a good player, it's just kind of see the different how they're going to respond, kind of deal. So
yeah,
no doubt.
We hear a lot of those stories, Steve, right? About guys who came in very low on the depth chart and rose up, and it gives you. I'm sure it gave you a lot of motivation, right, Clay?
Well, like Clay said, I mean, and those are including the walk-ons too. I'm sure. I mean, it's 36 defensive backs out of just the freshmen. Like Army used to. I mean, I remember there's 212 guys on the football team at one point. My freshman or sophomore year. I was letter I. I was letter I at linebacker, and I think there was like, I don't know, J and K below me. Like I'm like Clay. I came in at like number I or letter I, and I was like, holy, this is a lot of people. Like, how are we gonna feed all these people? But same reaction you had, Clay. Like, all right, well, I just need to keep crushing 2-a-days, and I had one. It was one specific play because Clay, how many plays did you get at practice? Right.
Yeah, we just scout team. That's all it was.
Yeah, you got what? You got 3 or 4 reps, and it was like, hey, next guy. 3 or 4 reps, next guy. And I blitzed one time, crossed the running back, and they moved me up to like C, and I was like, oh, thank God. I made it.
That's fun. That freshman year was fun, and we had one heck of a team. And Ben Kotwika, C.W. Estes. You look at the defensive backs, Bobby Brown, Gerald Tyquinko, Tommy Mullins. We just had some really good leaders, and it was just fun to be a part of that. Garland Gay was another one. He was a cornerback for us. Just a phenomenal team. Defense was unreal. Stephen King and Ben Cowweek were inside linebackers. And man, those guys would just fly around and hit people. It was just fun to watch. But being a part of that team, they really made us freshmen, us plebes, feel like we were part of it too. And we had these little jerseys, and they called it the SAS. They'd give us little SAS awards if we played well in practice, and we get little stickers on our helmets. And man, we always felt like we were part of that team too. And shoot, we went to the bowl game. I didn't get to travel to the bowl. Only a limited amount of plebes got to travel, but that was down in it was in Independence Bowl, so it would have been in Shreveport, Louisiana,
Yes.
and played Auburn. And I remember watching it on TV and just going crazy, just watching that game on TV and feeling like I was still a part of it. So the way that Coach Sutton and the way that coaching staff just bred that team culture, and the way that those seniors led that team was pretty dang cool. It was cool to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean the seniors, it all, obviously starts at the top, but it's so critical having those informal leaders, players, and then your seniors just, make sure that culture's right. The head coach can't do that. Your staff can't do that. It's got to be the senior leader, the seniors of that class. And, for me, I always remember feeling like our captains were not like, I don't expect them to, they're not the ones that are going to be grooming me. Right. So I always, and it wasn't anything VD did or Caleb Campbell did. I just felt as a freshman, they got a lot on their plate. I don't expect them to mentor me. I don't know if that's how you feel, Clay, but I had a good battle buddy, and I had a good sophomore and junior class that those guys mentored the freshmen in the film room, how to watch film, or how to study, or how to combat, film work and study work and the core and football. Do you have a guy that just was there for you or showed you the way, or a peer that got you through it that freshman year, even into that freshman second semester when you started spring ball, that you really felt like he took you under your wing?
Yeah, I've got several. I think freshman year, I'd have to pin it on a guy named Tom Gecky. And Tom's a colonel right now. He's a stud in the military. In fact, I owe him some barbecue sauce because his Bengals beat my Chiefs. So we were texting each other about an hour ago, actually. So I got to send him some barbecue sauce. But Tom was my workout buddy. He was the guy whose yellow locker was next to mine. He was the guy that when you had your optional workouts on Sundays after games, he was the guy that was bouncing me on my bed saying, "Hey, wake up, let's go to chow, let's get up there, let's walk up to the stadium." And Tom refused to ride the bus. He would always walk. That was his thing. So I would always walk with Tom, and no doubt Tom was that guy for me, that plebe year, that just pushed me. And then, Tom played defense. He was kind of a hybrid. They called it the night position at the time, but he's kind of like a hybrid outside linebacker for us. In the DB room, it was a guy named Tony Coaxum. And Tony Coaxum, still a great friend of mine today. He's on a text chain. We talk all the time via text. But Tony was my DB buddy. And for sure, between the two of us, we held each other accountable and made sure we're making the most out of our days. So,
yeah, Coach Coaxum was our defensive backs coach when I was there. So he was a big brother to me as well. And still to this day, rooting for Big Blue. Loved watching what he's doing with the program there, and I can honestly, I 100% could see that because he was like that as a coach. He was making sure guys had that iron sharpens iron type of deal where, who's gonna push you on your bed, kind of deal. So love Coach Coaxum. That's small. I love how it comes full circle where just the brotherhood continues to impact one another. So
he might be watching.
So when you
Steve, you might be
go ahead,
watching
Sal.
now. He might be watching now. He retweeted the podcast. He could be watching right now as we speak. So
yeah,
go
Coach,
ahead,
if you're out there, go ahead. Tell us to ask Clay a comment that will make him sweat a little bit, so we can get some goods on the 96, 97, 98, 99 era.
Yeah, if you have any comments or questions while we're talking to Clay, please feel free to send them in and we'll post them. Really appreciate it. Here we go. Oh, Bay Knight wants to know how the coaches handle all those players when you have like over 200 players, right?
They I'll tell you, like Bob Sutton was my head coach for all 4 years, and he empowered the coaches underneath him with each of the different groups. And man, we felt like we were part of it. We didn't, just because there's 200 players, we didn't feel like we were number 200. Like I felt like every practice was important. And part of that was just the culture that Army has, like we're we say brothers, and, there's a lot of people that use that term a lot. It's just different. And Steve knows what I mean. It really is different. It's one of those things where if any one of those guys that I played with needed me tomorrow, I'd be there. And in the same token, they'd be there for me. And it's some of those things that you breed that. You breed that in the weight room. You breed it, not only on the practice field, but I mean, and by the way, our field was that rock solid turf. Like it was that, we didn't have that soft turf or whatever. It was that hard turf. That's what we had back in the late 90s. And anyone that was tackled or tackled someone on that turf and it was cold outside knows what it feels like. But it's concrete. But yeah, just experiencing that with your brothers, it's different. And then you go to class, and at the same time you're going to school not just to play football. You're going to school not just to get an engineering degree from West Point. You're going to be a leader in the military, and I think we all would hold each other accountable for that, and just added to another layer of that brotherhood that just other places don't have. So, yeah. So yeah, I mean, 200 people, we all felt like we're just as important.
Yeah, I mean, you have your defensive and offensive coordinator, and then you have your position coaches, and then how you really handle it is you have seniors and informal leaders that hold each other accountable, and that is the only way that culture works. And I've seen it in the military, I've seen it at Army football, and I can only imagine you've seen it throughout your career, Clay, and then as you transition to the civilian world. I mean, you got to have informal leaders and people that are not just the authority, right? People in authority, it's like when you're a kid, right? And your dad tells you what to do, and you're like, yeah, I got it, Dad. Like, and then, your buddy, or, even maybe if it's someone else, anybody else tells you, your dad's right. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. My dad was right. That's just kind of how I look at it.
Yep. That's right. It's like the NCO Corps,
So, Clay, after your freshman year, how does your first spring ball go, and how do you kind of progress even further up the depth chart for the Black Knights?
Yeah, so that was the first real opportunity for me, and I did move from cornerback to safety in that spring ball, and that was my first chance to make a move and actually make the travel team. So that was a good spring ball for me, and I was not a fast player. I was known more for being a good tackler and could hit people. So that was type of safety that I played. And at the end of spring ball, I think I was third string on the depth chart. And two guys I think really highly of, Bobby Brown was the starter that year, and then Matt Rogers, who's also still in the military, was right there too. And Bobby and Matt were both seniors. So I got to travel, which was just an unbelievable experience as a sophomore, and got to actually, go to the hotels the night before games. Was part of the special teams that year, so I played on all four special teams, and even got a little bit of game time here and there. So In fact, I think the first game I played was against Boston College up in Boston. They also had a hard turf. And Steve, you guys had Under Armour by the time you were playing. Back when we played, we didn't have like the Under Armour gear that we would wear underneath our pads and stuff. So, taking the whole national champions of toughness to a certain level, I remember that game. It was probably low 30s and just not enough to freeze, but it was like kind of raining, like the sleet rain or something. And the turf was hard.
It's the worst.
Yeah, and that was my first. I think that was my first travel game, and we were trying out some like knockoff version of Under Armour, but I think it was before Under Armour actually existed. So it's like this tight like stuff you'd wear. Well, I remember all the teammates saying, don't wear that. Don't wear that. It's not tough. It's not tough. So I remember going out and nobody wore that during the pregame. And then we went back in and we went to our little team meetings and, Bill Sheridan, Coach Sheridan was there. He's getting us prepped up for the game. And then when we went back out, I must have missed something because everybody else was wearing it except for me. Like I was the only guy that wasn't wearing it. And I remember thinking, holy cow, like I'm freezing. I'm not wearing no sleeves. And I do remember like just freezing on the sideline. Then I remember John Bonamega was our special teams coach. He'd be like, kick off, and I'd run in there like, oh my God, I could run in there and get warm for a second. And I think at halftime I actually ended up putting it back on. But that was my first game experience, I think, was that game. So it was fun.
Yeah, I do. That was still very real in when I was there, Clay. I didn't wear sleeves, not one game my entire career. So, and you know what? I don't really remember. I just remember being like, I'm never going to wear sleeves. And I remember it was being like, you can't feel if you're tackling the right way or something. Somebody told me that at one point, and I was like, all right, no sleeves. Can't risk it. Right? As like a freshman, can't risk it, So I do want to say I never did wear sleeves. I don't really 100% remember every single game, but I'm pretty sure I didn't wear sleeves. So it was the same mentality. Like, nah, linebackers don't wear sleeves. I'm like,
that's
okay.
Right.
Yeah. Colonel Rogers was also at the academy as an OR, as Major Rogers when Colonel King was there. So that was that was our power duo, along with Colonel Polka at the time as our head OR. I mean, so you can imagine, Clay, those two and what kind of impact they can bring. Oh, and by the way, when those two get there, that just happens to be the year that we end up going to a bowl game and winning, right? So like, obviously they'll never take credit for it, but the way they talked about how you have to be all the time, I know that's how you guys grew up under Coach K, because that's what he preached as my defensive coordinator at prep school. Just win at everything. And it's funny how when you start winning at everything, how winning on the field becomes not necessarily easy, but it starts to happen more and more.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Matt Rogers is one of my all-time favorites for sure.
Right. He awesome big brother. Still text both of those gentlemen to this day and Coach Coaxum. So, like you said, man, I mean, they're great individuals. So anyway, back to your sophomore year. So sophomore year comes and goes. How did this is kind of like where we go from here is, how did the culture change or shift, or what was the major difference from when you were an underclassman kind of like role player / informal leader to now you start to move to upperclassmen, truly an informal leader, and how you manage that culture, or how you want to keep the culture, or what you want to change?
Yeah, I think, we're, at that time you're 19, 20 years old. So you're still developing as a leader. You're still learning. You're still learning what the right thing to do is. So, leadership by example is something that you have to do. And that was something, in the weight room, definitely on the field, in the practice field, giving your all every single time. I was one of those guys that probably would go full speed and half speed drills, which probably pissed off some coaches every now and then. But hey, I mean, that's kind of just the way that I was wired at the time, and what leadership by example is. And Yeah, I think once you kind of get through that sophomore year, and you're committed to the military, committed to Army, going into your junior season, you absolutely have to take that role on and do the best you can to mentor those folks coming up behind you. And for us, it was the defensive backs. So that's what Tony Coxum, myself, some of the other juniors would do. We'd mentor those and say, hey, we had the orange or the yellow lockers too, just like you did. So keep focus, stay after it. Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of when you make that leadership shift, I think, no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, but it's always, for me, I feel like there's obviously that huge deal of committing to the Army your junior year, next, whatever they want to call it, 10 years if you count reserves or whatever. But for me, I always found it's so much easier to follow what right looks like, right? And then all of a sudden, you come into a meeting room and you start noticing people are watching you do everything.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of almost like, oh, they need to know what to do. And now they're looking at me to do it. So it almost becomes an outside motivation if you don't think about it right up front. If I'm messing with stuff in my hands while watching film, or all those little things start to add up. I don't know. It's just kind of that's the hardest part for me, is noticing that every single thing now that I do, where it was, only the important things mattered before, now everything matters. And I think the guys that can know that sooner, or have someone tell them that, helps them. I don't know if you felt that way, Clay, or if you experienced, all of a sudden you're in a meeting room and you look over and guys are like, what's Clay Daniels doing? I need to be doing that. So do you have any memories of that, or any kind of, anything that pops out?
I don't know if anything specifically pops out, but you're right. I mean, that is a big shift. I think when you're playing football, a lot of times you're thinking about the game, what's coming next, your assignments. You're watching film. You're so focused on that. You kind of forget that there's probably someone there staring at you and seeing how you're reacting, how you're talking to coach. But that's actually a great point. Especially for those folks that are younger leaders in their career. I mean, I look at the team right now, and like Broughton, man, what a tough, passionate. He plays my position. He's a stud, and I just love watching that kid play. And man, he gets it, and he gets it just with his actions. I'm sure he's very, very highly intelligent, and he speaks really well, and he talks well in front of the team, but he wouldn't have to say a word. If you just watch that kid play and watch how he runs around, makes plays, gets up, the energy, the nonverbal communication that he has, that's leadership. That's leadership right there. So yeah, I mean, he made that shift when he was a junior, and I think he was team captain, right? When he was junior. I mean, who does that at the premier leadership school? Holy cow! What a stud. So yeah, I mean, people that can make that shift, and to me, it's leadership by example, all the time. And like you said, Steve, I mean, you start doing something that's not indicative of a leader, people see it and they think it's okay. So it's a big shift to make.
And when you guys, you started going to be juniors and seniors, what did you? I mean, I remember I had what we started with was a senior council, right? We'd always meet with the seniors down at the core at some part during the week and say, hey, are we on glide path or where are we deviating, right? Because we can't see everything as the captains. Where are we deviating? We said we wanted to do it this way. This is how we wanted to be at the beginning of the season. Where can we help as leaders, or what are you guys seeing at your positions, at all over the core, right? Our eyes and ears everywhere. And I think that what the culture we wanted to set with what we wanted to take, what we liked about being underclassmen, like what we liked about the program, and what we didn't like, and what we said we absolutely didn't want to, have happen. You always try to make short lists, right? So you always focus on those things. Was there anything you remember? There was something about the culture that you guys really wanted to implement when you were the upperclassmen, and there was maybe something either you didn't want to implement or something you just kind of didn't bring with you when you became that leadership position?
Man, well, so the national champions of toughness that started in our era. Like that started. I think it may have started with maybe like 90, 95, like 94, 95, like some of those guys back then. And I know like the team, the Independence Bowl team, like that was our big slogan, national champions of toughness. So that was certainly the culture of the, like when you look at who we wanted to be, that's who we wanted to be every game. We come out, we're going to hit people in the mouth. We're going to be tougher than anyone else out there. So when I look back and just think about that in general, like everything we did was kind of based off of that theme. And we had some really good leaders in my class. Nate Hunterton, no doubt, he was my captain. And, to this day, I still look at him as my captain, Nate Hunterton. And David Hagman. David Hagman's was a defensive end for us. Just great leader by example, and yeah, I think defensively, and that's one thing that we did have kind of like an offense defense leadership groups, I believe. But we had like the summer before we called it PIAD. I think it was forget what the acronym stood for. It was a chance for us to come live together, build camaraderie,
captain's practices type of deal.
Oh yeah. We had a couple weekends where we went out. We went to Pottsville, Pennsylvania one time and played home run derby at my buddy Brian Dempster's house, and he had like 25 Army football players over there, juniors and seniors, and offense beat the defense and home run derby, I think, that weekend. But just building that camaraderie, that brotherhood, that culture. And I think it stemmed around the national champions of toughness. I mean, that's what we were. That's what we wanted to be. Every game that we played, no one was going to out-tough us. So that's just kind of everything we did was based around that.
Yeah, Clay, I was just wanted to ask you a little bit about since we're coming up on, we're only 5 or 6 days away from Army Navy. I just wanted to ask you if you have any like Army Navy memories of your playing days and what you remember of the rivalry back then. Yeah,
so I've got several. The first one when I was a plebe, I wasn't on the field. I was in the Corps Cadets, just because I didn't dress out for the game. But watching Ronnie Makeda make plays that game was pretty cool to watch. And Navy was really good that year, but we won that game. My sophomore year, I remember, that was when I was on the travel squad. I remember telling all my friends back home, like, hey guys, I'm going to be playing on national television. It's going to be really cool. I'm number 34, watch for me. And then when I came in to before I came into my jersey, I was a different number. I was number 23. So it's funny, like I didn't even have like my number would rotate in the games. Like sometimes I was 34, sometimes I was 23. So I remember telling everyone, well, I guess I can't tell everyone, what number I'm going to be. So that was my memory of that game was getting a different number for Army Navy. We did not win that year. That was a tough year. That was at the Meadowlands, and it was really, I remember being really, really cold. I will tell you one of the toughest Army football players that I've ever played with was Joe Hewitt, and Joe Hewitt played fullback for us. And he did bust one right at the beginning of the game for it was probably a 60, 70-yard touchdown. He's a fullback for us. And Joe probably, he had multiple, concussions playing football. And but man, he was a tough son of a gun, and he was fast. But I do remember that game. That was pretty cool to watch Joe do that. And then junior year was at the Veterans Stadium, and Sal, you may remember this. Do you remember when the cadets were like leaning on the stand wall and it fell
Yeah.
down?
Yep.
It was that was the game that year. But we had two big runs there. One was Craig Stucker. Stuck truck is what we call Craig. He broke one to the house, and then the other one was Ty Amy, and Ty Amy was another one of her fullbacks. Craig and Ty would rotate in and out, and he broke one to the house that game too. And that was a win that year, which was pretty neat. And then unfortunately we didn't win our senior year, but my memory there is, my senior season, I broke my leg, the sixth game of the year against Southern Mississippi down in Hattiesburg. And I was broke it on the field. The lineman kind of dove on me and broke my fibula and just kind of a minor break in my tibia. But I swore, I was like, man, I'm going to make it back for Army Navy. I know I'm going to make it back for Army Navy. And I had like this little air cast that I wore. And I remember my mom sent me like these magnets because she told me these magnets would help my bone heal faster or something. But this is a long time ago before like any technology. And I really thought I was going to play in that game. And I just couldn't. I suited up for the game, and I had this air cast on there, but it was just so hard to like plant and cut and run with it on. But my coach, Mike Sullivan, was our DB coach. He put me in the last play of the game of the Army Navy game, and it was the 100th Army Navy game, and he wanted me to play in the 100th Army Navy game, and it was unfortunate when Navy was kneeling on the ball. But it was still a memory I'll never forget because, I actually got to say I played in the 100th Army Navy game. So with somewhat of a broken leg.
And it goes back to the culture that coaching staff set. Like, unless they care about you as a person and truly care about you, you're not just a player that's going to come and go. That doesn't happen at that Division I level. Coaches, they don't have they owed you nothing, Clay. They didn't have to do that. I've got to meet Mike a couple times over the years, and that's just awesome that he recognized that and saw how hard you worked to dress for that game. So what a cool experience. And
yeah,
I'm sure that like you said, it's just something that you'll never forget, that experience and how you were treated as a person. And you take some of that with you as you became an Army officer, you know what I mean? That memory.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's pretty special when you have coaches that care about their players as much as that. So
it says a lot about the rivalry too, right? Where, the game might have been already decided, but the fact that you were out there for the last play of your senior year, probably the last time you played football, right, Clay, or no?
that was it. That was the last time. Yep.
Yeah. That's it. You mentioned Southern Mississippi. I just wanted to touch on this real quick about, Army moving to Conference USA when you were there, right? That was a transition from going from an independent schedule to now a conference schedule. And I think Cincinnati was the first game that you guys played as a Conference USA team, and you were able to, defeat Cincinnati. So, I always like to ask former players when we have them on, maybe who was the best player that they played against when they were at Army, because some of the names that you'll hear are like some of the guys that went on to big time things in the NFL. But first off, what was that like, the Conference USA move?
Well, that was pretty cool. I mean, we went from an independent playing, and then we went to Conference USA, and we were playing Louisville and Tulane and Houston. I think the biggest thing as a DB that changed was all those teams threw the ball a lot. Yeah. So you went from the typical four defensive back set to at least a nickel in most games, and I was actually pretty fortunate. I got to play a lot of nickel junior year, and I wasn't real good at it by no means, but just had a chance to play, and there was some times I remember playing against like Tulane or Louisville and just getting beat so bad in a man coverage. And then trying to catch up and just tackling the guy before the ball got there and getting a pass interference call. And I think it was Bob Shoup was my coach, my DB coach at the time. He would just say, "Hey, man, like at least you didn't give up the touchdown." So, yeah, that was a big thing. You asked who the best player was. It was definitely Randy Moss. He played for Marshall. That was sophomore year, and I think he had the ESPN Play of the Year against us. And that was if you Google Randy Moss Army ESPN Play of the Year, you'll see I think it was a 92-yard touchdown, and yeah, he made a play. I mean, he was good. I was probably standing on the sidelines as he ran by. My buddy Kevin Koger played. He was on the kickoff team with me that year, and he actually tackled Randy Moss on the kickoff. So he'll always say that he tackled Randy Moss.
That's right.
But yeah, I think a couple plays later, he went deep for a touchdown.
Clay, real quick, shout out to Kevin Koger. He's from my neck of the woods, Sussex County, New Jersey. He played at, I believe, Wallkill Valley High School, and he was a guy that was from Northern New Jersey. Shout out. That's the name I haven't heard in a long time. So awesome. Yeah.
Koger is one of my all-time favorites. One of my best buds. Yeah, he's still staying in touch. He's on that same text chain with all those other guys. So.
Right. Yeah, you talk about that Randy Moss game, right? I was just starting at the newspaper then, and I didn't even know where West Point existed when I first got to the paper in Middletown, and then to see Randy Moss go off in one of the first games that I was able to follow, so to speak. I didn't cover the game, but I was able to follow it and see him. It's like, wow, that was kind of the breakout for him, right? A little bit, right, for him, and that kind of showed that he was ready for.
It was. What was crazy is I think we rushed for 500 yards that game, and I think they had 20 plays and we had 80 plays, and they still beat us because 3 of those plays were to Randy Moss for touchdowns. So I think we gave the ball up a couple times, couple fumbles, but man, I think we ran for 500 yards. I mean, they couldn't stop us either. So, but yeah, getting back to Conference USA, I think that was fun. One of my favorite games was against East Carolina down in Greenville, North Carolina. And Steve, did you ever play there?
No, we didn't. We never played against East Carolina.
That was a pretty cool game. I mean, talk about a football town that just revolves around that school. Their mascot's the purple. I think it's the Purple Pirates, and they had this. They would come out. They came out to Jimi Hendrix Purple Haze, and all this purple smoke was blowing around all over the place.
That's pretty cool.
The whole crowd was bebopping around to Purple Haze in the crowd. And the quarterback was David Gerard, and he played for the Jacksonville Jaguars for a while.
Yep.
And I do remember I played a lot that game and I blitzed David Gerard and actually hit him. And I remember it felt like I was hitting a brick wall. The guy was 265 pounds, 6'3". And I don't think he moved much even, and I gave him everything I had. So, but that was a fun game. And then Southern Miss, Sal, that was Adalius Thomas played in that game. Remember him? He played for the Ravens.
Oh yeah,
he was a defensive end for Southern Miss. That game was really, really good. So,
yeah, you look at talent now, right? He's going with Moss, 5 catches, 175.
We don't need to be reminded, Christian.
Christian Gamar and I went to the same high school. Yeah, I went to Blue Island North High School.
There you go.
Yeah.
The connections, right? On the pod. Great to have that connection here. Back to Conference USA, right? Now it's Group of 5, right? That would be a Group of 5 conference, but there is a ton of talent in those conferences, and Army's found that out this year with UTSA, Coastal Carolina, Troy. Those are some really good teams with a lot of guys that are going to play at the next level. So, yeah, it's pretty cool just to hear those stories, right, Steve? I mean, you're a Ravens fan, so it's going to be cool to hear, right?
I knew as soon as you heard the name, as soon as he said the name, I was like, oh yeah, I remember watching him. I didn't know you played against him, but yeah, that's he was a great player for the Ravens, man. Played multiple years. Clay, where are you watching the Army game this year?
In my house right here in Kansas City area. Yeah, gosh, for the past 10 years, I have a little Army-Navy party over here. Another Army football player lives in town, Mark Regal. He would have been class of 2002. Mark's going to come over here. His son and my son are the same age, and they both want to play Army football someday. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's, you don't even, and I've got 3 sons, Clay, and it's the same kind of deal, man. Like, I don't push anything on them, but they're like, they get their Army football and they're like, yeah, we're going to play, Army football. And I'm like, all right. Well, might be because I'm like yelling at the TV every weekend, but
it's that culture, Steve. It's the culture you're establishing in that house.
That's right.
They want to be like you.
Yeah. Clay, before I forget, I could be up in your neck of the woods next year at CGSC. So
if you are, you got to link up. I got a basement with a bed. You can shack up here on the weekend, man. Have a couple beers.
That'll be my couch when the wife gets mad at me.
I'll tell you that's been great to live here though, because I get to see everyone. Like Adisa King was here a couple years ago. Tom Gecke, Graham White was our punter back in the day. Graham's was the 3rd Ranger Battalion commander last year.
Wow.
So
I get to see all those guys when they come through here. So it's been pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, it's every year you've got Army football players at CGSC. So anybody, I'll definitely remember, Clay. I'll reach out. I'll get your info after this.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, man, that's awesome that you have your little Army Navy tradition. It's important to have. It's a big deal. So that's awesome, and glad that you get to watch it with a brother, because it's always more fun when you win in numbers. So
yeah, more people really care and know what it means.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
go ahead, Sal.
No, I was just going to say I'm going to be at the game, and Black Eye Nation is going to have you covered with coverage. Hopefully, get some pregame stuff. I want to hit some tailgates, maybe get some interviews with former players, maybe put something together about what the Army game means to them. So it should be. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be similar to last year's game, and we'll see if hopefully the Black Knights will pull out of the game in the fourth quarter. And get that dub. So. What were you going to – sorry to interrupt, Steve.
I just was going to ask Clay, what was, as he progressed and became an Army officer, what was your branch? How long did you serve? And what was the, everyone, we were always told the best thing you'll learn about leadership to become a combat arms officer is Army football. And I don't know if you felt that way, but, just kind of tell us, that kind of part of your history and, what you brought with you from Army football.
Well, so I did my research on you, Steve, and you were an infantry officer. So hell yeah, man. When I was going through, field artillery was like the big branch. They call it football alumni.
Football association too. Yep.
Yeah. And a gentleman named Chuck Schretzman.
Oh man.
Was one of my mentors, and Colonel Schretzman was a infantry officer, and then I had 3 other folks that really mentored me, and I was leaning FA, and then Graham White for sure, Matt is Pat Work's little brother. He was a good friend of mine, and he helped convince me to go infantry. And then Craig Stucker and Chris Wilkinson, Chris Big Daddy Wilkinson. Those are the guys that convinced me to go infantry. So I branched infantry. I stayed at West Point for 6 months. I was a GA for 6 months, and then went down to Fort Benning. Went through airborne school or infantry officer base school, airborne school, and then Ranger school. And I graduated Ranger school with Tom Gecke. With Adisa King, and with Nate was a class behind me. Nate recycled, but
Rangers recycle.
Okay. Real Rangers, I totally agree with you. It's tougher to recycle, no doubt about it. But graduated September 14th, 2001, so 3 days after 9/11. In fact, I was in Florida phase when 9/11 happened. And I remember we were supposed to jump back into Fort Benning, and that jump was canceled. And we rode on a bus back to Fort Benning, and I sat next to Tom Gecke the whole way. And my mom had sent me some peanut butter, and Tom and I ate the peanut butter with our fingers the whole way back on the bus. I think we put down that whole jar of peanut butter. And then, so then I reported my unit. I was with the 101st Airborne Division. So would have been, September of 2011 or 2001 is when I went there. And I got introduced. We had one little deployment to Jordan. My roommates they're in the Rakkasans. I was in 1st 327. I see you got 187 back there. Is that Steve?
I got the Iron Rakkasans 3187.
Okay. So I was in 1st of 327.
Okay.
Bastogne Brigade. And we ended up deploying so we did not deploy to Afghanistan, but we deployed to Iraq in 2003. So I was there for a year. I was a rifle platoon leader, company executive officer. And then when I came back, I went right to SF selection. And then I was selected. So then went back to the captain's career course, which at the time, the special forces officers, they go to the captain's career course of the branch that they're assigned to previously. So I went back to Benning, spent some time there, then went to Fort Bragg for the Q course, and then got out of the Q course, would have been early 2006, and then went to Fort Carson, Colorado, and I was with 10 Special Forces Group.
I'm out here now, Clay.
So. What's that?
I'm out here now.
Have you ever done the Manitou Incline, Steve?
Yeah, I did that like 4 days after moving here, Clay. Not a smart idea. I got
my favorite workout of all time right there.
Oh, man, I was not physically prepared for that 4 days into Colorado. Everyone always talks about the altitude, and I was like, it's fine. I'll be fine. I got smashed by that. I think it's like 2,000 feet you climb. I forget what that. Yeah, I forget what the actual number is, but my buddy was like, let's go do the incline. I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do it. And he smoked me. I was like, hey, man, I gotta slow down. I think I'm going to die. So
that's awesome. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm out here now, man. It's a great post. And that's funny how, I did it as a company commander and now as a senior captain, almost major, but it's those are two good posts to be at.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So Clay, you did 3 deployments or no?
Yeah. So I did 3 deployments to Iraq. One as an infantry officer, 2 as an A-team leader in special forces. Also had a deployment to Republic of Georgia, which was pretty cool. We call them Joint Combined Exchange Training. It was JSET. So that was about 2.5 months. So yeah, it was a outstanding experience. Great unit, great people. A different brotherhood with my teammates on my special force team, but very tight. And getting back to what you said, Steve, I think being an Army football player really laid that foundation for all that. No doubt about it. It was. You're part of a team atmosphere your entire cadet career. You graduate, and then you roll right into having an opportunity to lead teams, whether it's a platoon, a company, an SF team, and you really bring the same mentality, the same brotherhood mentality to that. People see that you lead by example. Good leaders, they take the trash out too. They're not the ones that just sit around and watch other people take the trash out because they're an officer. They're right there up there with their teammates doing that as well. So I think those experiences, Army football player, absolutely, I wouldn't have been nearly as good of a leader if I didn't have that experience.
Yeah. It's, I used to talk about this with Colonel King, Adisa and Colonel Rott, both majors at the time, but now, both full birds is, I don't know if you ever experienced this, Clay, but as you progress in rank or even as a lieutenant, did you ever work for an Army football player? Or did you ever have an Army football player work for you?
Just I got to be peers with Matt Work, which was great because we would compete against each other as peer platoon leaders. So we just brought the whole team up as we did that.
Yeah.
I never got a chance to work for an Army football player. But I can only imagine getting a chance to work for someone that wore the black and gold helmet.
I'll never forget what those two told me is like, you're not like, if you think you're coming to work for me and it's going to be easier than working for someone else, it's the exact opposite. I'm going to work you harder because I know what's in here. I know what you're capable of. And I used to tell guys all the time when I was like, especially when I was, about to be a company commander and I'd have football players or young lieutenants, oh, hey, sir, like, I'm going to request to come to your unit. Is there anything? I was like, just know, you come work for me, you're going to put everything into this. And you'll love working for me. Trust me. But don't come here thinking you're going to, it's going to be easier. It's going to be harder, but you'll be a better officer, person, mentor to your next guy. Dude, I'll never forget when, Major Rogers and Major King at the time talked to me about that. And it just that was one of those things that's, that stayed with me my entire career. And it still stays with me, as I continue to see peers or young lieutenants or guys that I, as a company commander now want to come to Carson and want to work or work in the same organization. I just tell them, I'm like, you're going to work harder. The expectation is that much higher because I know what you're capable of. And it was just something that I'll never forget. Those two told me. I
think Adisa King learned that from Matt Work because he got to go work for, at the time, Colonel Work and would have been Major King. And now Matt Work's a brigadier general.
So Colonel Work was Iron 6, right? 3187's battalion commander. And Colonel King was his operations officer before moving up to brigade. So that's awesome. I cannot imagine the HHC commander having to come in there and just be like working with those two, like, all right, I better be on my game because they are going to smell everything.
Yeah, I think one of the leadership traits of Adisa King is he is probably one of the best team builders that I've ever been around, like to build people up around him and build that team, that camaraderie, and that just passion to go accomplish whatever mission it is in front of him. That's just a unique skill set that Adisa King has that not too many people have that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when he started, and I still try to do it now, is he started the essentially an Army football email chain at Fort Campbell when we were stationed there together. And every quarter, he's like, hey, and he was lieutenant colonel and all of us were younger. So, of course, when he said, it's time for lunch, let's link up. Let's talk about what's going on in our lives, what we're committing ourselves to, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just like, man, what a great idea. Like what? And you're right, man. Clay, he's just such a team builder, and very fortunate to have him as a mentor in my life.
So Steve, you're how many years in now?
Prep school here, right?
Yeah,
so that year counts.
There you go.
So I hit 12 years active.
Wow.
December 28th of this year, and should be heading to CGSC next year.
Man, that's great. Good for you.
So
you're gonna hit 20 then.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm doing okay. I enjoy it. I love it. So as long as the Army doesn't tell me thank me for my service, I'll continue to do it until they do thank me for my service. So I love being an infantry officer. So it's good. And Clay, I'm so glad now that I know you live in Kansas City because we'll 100% link up once I make it out that way.
Absolutely, man. That's pretty cool. We'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. Just wanted to wrap this up. Talking about something that Clay that you recently did when you did something that you did to benefit awareness for the homeless. You did a 20-mile run with 50-pound backpack on just on Veterans Day, right? Recently, just can you talk about that and how you came up with the idea and just what that detailed?
Yeah, so I joined a board for a homeless shelter here in Kansas City about 3 years ago. The homeless shelter is called Restart. Very good, nonprofit that has a mission to end homelessness in Kansas City, which is pretty cool. So when I joined the board, organizations like that are always trying to raise money. So I started thinking about, hey, how can I raise money? So I decided just to post on LinkedIn. It was actually like Thanksgiving of a couple years back where I was going to do a road march with, a rucksack. And Steve, the standard, like the 35 pounds plus food and water. And I was like, nah, SF was 50 pounds plus food and water. In fact, maybe it was 55. I forgot it was during selection. So I decided to do that a couple years ago and did 20 miles to raise money. And then, I've done it the past 3 years. So last year I did it. It was the 40th anniversary for Restart. So I did 40 pounds and 40 miles last year. And that was rough. 40 miles was pretty rough. So this year I scaled it back to 50 pounds plus food and water, rain or shine, and did a little road march. And I think we raised about $24,000 this year for them. So, but yeah, I mean, that just goes back to, service. And, when you play Army football, when you serve in the military, in Special Forces, our slogan is De Oppresso Liber, which means free the oppressed. So whenever you have an opportunity to continue to serve for people that are less fortunate, and you have a chance to give back a little bit, that was just a chance for me to do that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
We didn't. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just saying it's awesome. It's like, I'll never forget when Mike Vitti was doing his walk across America for Legacies Alive, and I actually got to pitch that to my boss as, hey, sir, Mike's got about 12 miles from Fort Stewart to about Tybee Island where he wants to touch the Atlantic Ocean. I'd like to, brief my platoon on his mission, and I'd like to join, this final 12 miles and use that for our 12-mile, and just try to, not just raise awareness, but like, let's remember why we serve, gentlemen. Let's remember who's come before us, type of deal.
That's awesome, man. So you actually linked up with him, and
yeah, linked up with Mike. I found out where he was going to be at a certain time, and I met my platoon there waiting, and we linked in and we talked to him and Mark Fadowski on their way to, touching the Atlantic Ocean, from the Pacific Ocean, and briefed my guys on. Of course, the battalion commander loved it. He was like, send the whole company, like, tell your company commander, I want this. You know what I mean? He loved it. But I remember on that walk, Clay, Mike had just gotten out, and Mike had talked to me about service isn't up when you take off the uniform. Okay. There's so many ways to serve at so many capacities, whether that's your community or cause or both, or that is something that will be with you because of what kind of person that you were developed at what time in your life. And he's telling me this, and that's when I started getting active and creating, physical fitness programs for kids in my neighborhood, like just Saturday mornings, right? Just go out there and do that. And that just starting small. And then you like you do, Clay, I mean, you just did something that raised $24,000 for a cause that you care about. And you raise awareness, and you see, as long as once people start knowing they care about these things, and, you obviously are, you're a motivating guy. Like people want, people are going to want to join your cause, and using that platform and doing something crazy, like 40 pounds for 40 miles. It's like, how do you not like, yeah, I'm going to give this guy $10 for that.
Yeah.
Right? Like good for him. Like he's going to do it. Not me, but it's, it goes back to, the slogan that you live by as an SF officer, and just continue service even without the uniform is what's special about kind of the leaders they develop at the academy.
Absolutely, man. And all that's bred from, it also, for me, it all started when Bill Sheridan walked into my high school, back in 1994, 95, whenever that was. And I owe it to him for giving me the opportunity to go to West Point, and it's where it all started, and damn proud to be an Army football player and have a chance to serve and continue to do so.
It's awesome.
All comes full circle. We really appreciate your time tonight, Clay. There's a lot that we didn't get into about Clay Daniels, about his boxing prowess at West Point, about his brother Kurt playing after him right at West Point. So, I mean,
right.
we'd love to have you on down the road and maybe talk more. This has been great. Really hearing your stories and hearing everything how the Army Football Brotherhood kind of just the involvement in the Army Football Brotherhood in your life and just the connections that were made. And now here's another connection with you and Steve. So we really appreciate that. And Steve, Mike Vidi's walk across the country ended up at the Army Navy game, right? So the Army Navy game Saturday in Philadelphia, Lincoln Financial Field. I think the best venue for Steve, with all due respect for Baltimore, I think Lincoln Financial Field is the best venue for the Army Navy game. In my opinion, I've covered many Army Navy games there. Can't wait to cover another one on Saturday. Black Knights, midshipmen. We know who wins the march on. We know who won the uniform battle. Now let's see who wins the game on Saturday, and let's see if the Black Knights can get to 6-6. This is their bowl game. This is Army's bowl game on Saturday. So I think that's enough. Navy's your opponent. You want to send these seniors out, and there's nothing more motivating than this game, and we know how great this game is. You guys have played in this game. We know how great the game is, and we look forward to covering it. And Clay, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it. And guys, if you want to hear more of these interviews, check out our Black Knight Nation YouTube channel. We have an interview with Adisa King on our Black Knight Nation YouTube channel. Steve, we did that earlier this year. So guys, check that out. Check out blackknightnation.com. Have some stories. Gonna have some stories this week. Recruiting stories. Keep you up to date on recruiting. Check out our Instagram account and also our Twitter account. We appreciate you guys watching us tonight and look forward to seeing you down this week with possibly a preview for the Army Navy game and definitely a review of the game over the weekend. Thanks a lot, Clay. Thanks for coming on tonight. Steve, always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Clay, beat him.
That's right. Beat him, man. We'll see you.